In my previous life, the crown prince and my half-sister had an affair and conspired to kill me. The crown princess. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day 2 years ago when my father asked me to give up His Highness, the crown prince, to my half-sister. This time, I gladly agreed. Waking from the chaos, I went straight to the inner palace to request an audience with the Empress Dowager. Yer has admired the Prince of Jenin for a long time. I can't bear to see him suffer from illness, so I am willing to enter the manor for a wedding to bring him good fortune. In the Empress Dowager's bedchamber, I kept my eyes lowered submissively, baring my heart. The elegant and noble woman wiped away tears on the high platform, then had someone draft an imperial decree bestowing the marriage, to be announced to the world soon. I thanked her gracefully. The Prince of Jenin, Zhou Huaijin, was brave and skilled in battle. He went to the battlefield at 12, reclaimed over a dozen cities from the Tatars at 14, and guarded the border's peace for several years. The people of Great Zhou all adored him. But some time ago, the Prince of Jenin fell into a coma without any warning, and no medicine could cure him. With no other options, the current emperor bestowed 2 young maidens in succession to marry him and bring good fortune. But the first one died just days after entering the manor, and the second one perished before even making it through the wedding night. In the face of life and death, no matter how much reverence there was, no one was willing to marry into the Prince of Jenin's manor anymore. My appearance was undoubtedly the last lifeline for the Empress Dowager who dearly loved her son. As I walked out of the Empress Dowager's palace, I saw His Highness the Crown Prince, Zhou Lin, hurrying towards me. I slightly curved the corner of my lips. He came quite fast. Too bad, too late. He stared at me with bloodshot eyes. Mirong Yue, we're childhood sweethearts who grew up together. How could you let Imperial Grandmother betroth you to my Imperial uncle? Then when you were fooling around with my half-sister, why didn't you think about our childhood sweetheart bond? I scoffed coldly inside, but didn't want to argue with him in front of everyone, so I simply played dumb. It is precisely because we grew up together that I want to share your burdens. If I marry into the Prince of Jenin's manor, and can wake the prince up, wouldn't that be a blessing for the nation? Zhou Lin's face turned dark with anger. Ignoring the guard's attempts to stop him, he grabbed my wrist and took me to a deserted side hall. Facing his surging anger, I spoke gracefully. Your Highness the Crown Prince, when you were tumbling in the sheets with my sister at Xiangguo Temple yesterday, did you ever think of our childhood sweetheart bond? His complexion turned pale inch by inch, and he gradually loosened his grip on me. But after just a moment, he pressed forward again. The Eastern Palace is declining. I need the support of Xue's maternal family. I can't just watch other princes step on me to climb up. Besides, Xue is your half-sister. She'll definitely respect you in the future. I didn't like hearing that. I turned to leave directly, but Zhou Lin firmly cornered me against the wall. His voice was stubborn. Mirong Yue, I won't let you marry my imperial uncle. I chuckled softly. Your Highness, whether I marry or not isn't for you to decide. Loosening my silk garments, my clothes in disarray, I took advantage of his dazed moment to stumble out of the side hall. Help, the Crown Prince, he is trying to take liberties with me. The news spread quickly, and in just a moment, the Empress Dowager and His Majesty rushed over together, probably because Zhou Lin's behavior this time truly damaged the royal family's reputation. His Majesty directly had him escorted back to the Eastern Palace and confined for a month. As he left, he stared at me with a vicious gaze, while I stood meekly with lowered eyes among the crowd, unmoved. Zhou Lin will never know that, in my past life, I was married to him. It was only on our wedding day that I learned my half-sister Mirong Xue would also be moving into the Eastern Palace with me. He said he loved me, that marrying Mirong Xue was just an expedient measure, and for the sake of his so-called love, I endured and retreated step by step. But after I got pregnant, Mirong Xue framed me for having an affair with a guard, and Zhou Lin, without distinguishing right from wrong, directly had people force abortion medicine down my throat. That night, I lost my child, bleeding non-stop, and they looked down at me from above, as if looking at garbage. Mirong Shui squatted beside me, telling me all the sordid things between them, bit by bit. Only then did I realize that they had been together behind my back all along, and the backyard of Shangguo Temple was where they had their trysts. My eyes were about to split from rage, yet I was utterly helpless. Later, Mirong Shui and I were captured by the Tartars together. Jolin chose to save Mirong Shui, while I was severely injured and died with my eyes wide open in resentment. This time around, I will make them pay blood for blood. After returning home from the palace, my father was sitting in the main hall waiting for me. He said, "Your younger sister went to Shangguo Temple yesterday, and after coming back she has been making a fuss about wanting to marry the crown prince. Father can't do anything about her, so why not?" He seemed unable to continue, probably because he knew Mirong Shui had already given her purity to Jolin. I smiled and finished for him. "Why not just grant my sister's wish?" My father's expression was awkward, with a hint of guilt on his face, but more of it was a sense of entitlement. That is right. Father has always been like this all these years. He knew full well that I was in love with Jolin. Yet he still wanted to help Mirong Shui secure the marriage. Only because my mother was a merchant's daughter, a reluctant choice my father made when his grand ambitions hadn't yet been realized. After she died, my father quickly married a noblewoman as his second wife. In his eyes, only his second daughter Mirong Shui truly counted as a proper lady, worthy of being his daughter, even if Mirong Shui shamelessly seduced her future brother-in-law. And Mirong Shui had been spoiled and arrogant since childhood, loving to snatch my things, hairpins, pearl ornaments, rouge and powder. Whatever caught her eye, she had to take. She killed my puppy that I had raised for a long time and stewed it into a spicy dish. I tearfully devoured 3 big bowls, then threw all the bone scraps under Mirong Shui's pillow. She was scared into crying loudly while I got beaten by Father C. I knew it. My father's heart has always been biased. He only favors Mirong Shui. So later, when such things happened again, I stopped arguing. If it could be taken away, it never belonged to me in the first place. What belongs to me, others can't take away. As for Jolin, he developed a wandering heart, so he doesn't belong to me. On this day, in my previous life, I agreed to Father's request and fulfilled Mirong Shui's wishes. It was Jolin who refused to let me go. He said he only loved me. I believed him. And because of this misplaced trust, I lost my life. In this life, I don't want this kind of love anymore. Raising my head, I smiled at Father docilely and harmlessly. Since my sister likes him, I naturally should give him up to her. Father, actually, His Highness has always told me he really likes my sister. Why don't you go directly to the palace and request an imperial decree granting their marriage? Really, my father was half believing, half doubting. I nodded. Really, more real than all the gold you've embezzled. My father was delighted. I'll go see His Majesty right now. Don't worry, Father will definitely find you another good match in the future. I smiled and lowered my eyelashes, hiding the coldness in my eyes. No need. I've already made plans for myself. If this place won't keep me, there'll be places that will. My marriage to the Prince of Jenin is already set in stone. Mirong Shui wants to marry the crown prince, but she'll probably face many obstacles. A tall tree catches the wind. His Majesty definitely won't let the Mirong family dominate alone. Even if he approves Mirong Shui's marriage to the crown prince, he'll never give her the position of crown princess. Sure enough, my father came back from the palace with nothing to show for it. Not only did he fail to settle Mirong Shui's marriage, he was also coerced and tempted by His Majesty into signing the marriage contract between me and Zhou Huaijin. After he came back, he grabbed the whip from behind the door to beat me. Wretch, how dare you deceive me? So what? I gripped the whip and sneered coldly. "Father, I am about to marry the Prince of Jenin. If you bring this whip down, you won't just be hitting me. You'll be hitting the face of the Prince of Jenin's mansion and the entire royal family. You'd better think this through." My father's body stiffened, and the whip slipped from his hand. He was so furious his lips trembled. The Prince of Jenin has guarded the border for many years and carries a deadly aura. Even the abbot of Shangguo Temple said he is being claimed by vengeful spirits, which is why he remains unconscious. His Majesty ordered people to chant sutras and pray for him daily at Shangguo Temple, just to lessen the blood debts on him. His first princess consort died just days after entering the mansion. The second one didn't even make it through the wedding night. Yet, here you are, requesting an imperial decree to marry the Prince of Jenin yourself. Do you think that Prince of Jenin's mansion is some good place to be? Look at the way he talks. Anyone who didn't know better would think he was so worried about me. In reality, isn't it just because this marriage of mine didn't bring him any benefits? And on top of that, cost Mirong Shui her position as crown princess. He is upset about it. I rolled my eyes. Me stepmother, who had been silent this whole time, must have finally worked up the right emotions, because at this moment she finally burst into tears. Yuer, I know you don't like me or Shuer in your heart, but even if you didn't want Shuer to marry His Highness, the Crown Prince, you didn't have to gamble with your own life. Mirong Shui also chimed in with fake concern from the side. That is right, sister. You can't just treat your lifelong marriage as a joke, because I like the Crown Prince. You probably haven't even seen the Prince of Jenin's face. What a pair of drama queens, mother and daughter. I sighed. Mirong Shui, you really aren't that important to me. I've met the Prince of Jenin. I even owed him my life in my previous life. That is also why I insisted on marrying him in this life. In my previous life, the Tartars broke into the Crown Prince's residence at night, captured me and Mirong Shui, trying to use us to force the Prince of Jenin, Zhou Huaijin, to show himself. But Zhou Huaijin never appeared. The Crown Prince Zhou Lin sent people to negotiate, exchanging a city to get Mirong Shui back. They embraced tightly under the moonlight, making me look even more like a joke. I wasn't afraid of death. I just don't understand. Why is it that I've spent my whole life restraining myself, adhering to propriety and upholding virtue, yet I've never been able to receive love? I closed my eyes, awaiting the slaughter by the Tartars. In that moment, death had already become a release for me, but the blades never fell upon me after all. The Prince of Jenin, who had been bedridden with illness for so long, came. He wore plain white undergarments, raised his hand to draw his bow, and a sharp arrow pierced through the air, accurately penetrating the skull of the Tartar behind me. His complexion was pale to the point of translucence, his figure thin and frail, yet he still charged at the forefront, galloping swift as the wind. The longbow in his hand sounded again and again, each arrow piercing throats. Every Tartar around me became a ghost under his arrows. He came to my side alone, stepping over corpses strewn everywhere, swept me onto his horse in one fluid motion, and said softly, "Don't be afraid." Warm blood dripped onto my face, and I clenched my fists. "Your Highness, you shouldn't have come." He was the god of war of Great Zhou. He shouldn't have risked his life for me. You suffered this undeserved disaster because of me. How could I not come? His reply scattered in the wind, yet struck heavily upon my heart. Both he and I knew this was a trap the Tartars had set for him. Coming here meant certain death. But he still came. 10,000 arrows flew at once. He shielded me in his embrace, blood soaking through his plain white garments. The red was blinding and heart-wrenching. He clutched his chest, coughing violently, crimson blood foam continuously spilling from the corners of his lips. Yet he still refused to fall, only using his longsword to prop himself up, barely supporting his swaying body. In his eyes as he gazed at me, heart-wrenching agony churned, so thick it couldn't dissolve, nearly consuming him whole. he said. Sorry, I can't take you home anymore. But where do I even have a home? How could that place filled with betrayal and scheming be called a home? A cold arrow pierced through the air, fatal upon drawing blood. I used my body to block this fatal strike for him. Zhou Huijin, if only there were an afterlife. This was the last thought that crossed my mind before my consciousness sank into darkness. So when I truly felt the joy of rebirth, the first thing I did was ask the Empress Dowager to grant me marriage with Zhou Huijin. If no one would perform the wedding ritual to ward off his ill fate, then let me do it. He could walk into a certain death situation for me, so why couldn't I fight death for him? Father locked me in my room and stationed servants to guard the door. Who knows what he is trying to prevent? I lay in bed and slept soundly, and when I woke up, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Stretching lazily, rubbing my sleepy eyes, I lifted a calligraphy scroll on the wall, pushed open the hidden door, and after walking through the secret passage for half a quarter, I stood on the main street. This was the escape route. My mother had her trusted confidants dig for me after she realized father had divided loyalties. In my previous life, I married into the Eastern Palace, and this secret passage had no use. But in this life, it is quite suitable for sneaking out of the house. The long street was brightly lit. Crowds bustled about, and vendors stood shoulder to shoulder. I bought a stick of candied hawthorns and ate while walking forward. The sweet and sour taste of hawthorn melted on my tongue, inexplicably lifting my spirits. When I reached Wang Yue Tea House at the liveliest street corner, the storyteller inside was loudly striking his wooden clapper, recounting the legend of Prince Zhenin, Zhou Huijin, with resounding words. He told of how Prince Zhenin, dragging his sickly body, broke through the Tatar encirclement alone, killed the enemy with an arrow to the throat to save those trapped, then single-handedly steadied the army's morale, led the Iron Cavalry to sweep across the northern frontier, beat the rebellious Tatar tribes into continuous retreat, recaptured 3 key border towns in succession, and forcibly pushed the northern defense line back to the old boundary. Cheers thundered through the tea house as patrons slapped tables in applause, the sound nearly toppling the lanterns at the eaves. I leaned against a corridor pillar, my heart burning with emotion. Even though I'd heard this story hundreds and thousands of times, I still reached out to hand some silver bits to the waiter as an extra tip. The audience below all sighed with regret, saying that if the Prince of Zhenin hadn't taken several arrows that day while saving someone, causing his old ailments and new wounds to flare up together, leaving him unable to endure the hardships of the battlefield, and forcing a hasty return to the capital. With his valor, he would surely have trampled the Tatar royal court flat, and rid the northern border of the flames of war forever. The storyteller took a sip of tea, then abruptly changed the subject, his voice rising even higher as he spoke of how the current emperor, moved by the Prince of Zhenin's service in protecting the nation, not only promoted him and elevated his rank, but also allocated 10,000 gold to rebuild the Prince of Zhenin's residence, and even bestowed a gilded plaque inscribed Pillar of the Nation. Such grand imperial favor that no one in the entire capital could compare. No one could compare. Isn't this outshining the sovereign? Me heart skipped a beat. I suddenly recalled what the Crown Prince had done in my previous life. The Crown Prince traded an entire city to get Murong Shui back. So why didn't the Tatars choose to hold Zhou Lin, the Crown Prince of Great Zhou, hostage instead? Wouldn't that have given them even better odds? The answer was on the tip of my tongue. The candied hawthorn in my hand suddenly lost its appeal. It seems I need to make a trip to the Prince of Zhenin's residence to warn Zhou Huijin. Although he is still in a coma, there should be trustworthy people around him. The Prince of Zhenin's residence had probably already received the imperial decree of the bestowed marriage. When the guard saw me, he took me directly to the study. The moment I stepped through the door, I met a pair of starry eyes brimming with amusement. Him, Zhou Huijin, Wasn't he supposed to be unconscious and on the verge of death? Could it all have been an act? I collected myself and looked up at the man behind the desk. He wore a black brocade robe with subtle cloud patterns embroidered on the sleeves. His ink-black hair was held up by just a single jade hairpin. His brows were like ink paintings, his nose bridged tall and straight, his lips clearly defined. He looked cold and noble. Yet he didn't look as sickly as I had imagined. In my past life, after he had jinxed 2 women who married him for luck, no one was willing to marry him anymore. I heard he kept falling into repeated comas, gravely ill, and didn't even show up at the Crown Prince's wedding. And the day he rushed to save me, he truly looked like he was on death's door. How come today? I suddenly remembered something I had overlooked in my past life. So the Crown Prince had already been scheming since then. I looked up at Zhou Huaijin. He was also staring at me, his gaze deep and unfathomable, carrying a calm that seemed to see through everything. My brain short-circuited for a moment. My body involuntarily stepped back twice, and I nearly fell flat on my butt. He quickly stepped forward and grabbed my arm to steady me, the corners of his lips seemingly curving into a faint smile. I heard you have something to tell me. Being so close, I could smell the pine wood scent on him, exactly the same as when he saved me in my past life. My nose stung with emotion. After I died in my past life, I never knew what happened to him, or if anyone went to save him. If everything was the Crown Prince's scheme, then he probably died alongside me under that rain of arrows. Unfortunately, it was so chaotic back then that I didn't even get a chance to thank him for rushing to save me despite everything. Fortunately, in this life, I won't marry the Crown Prince, nor will I put myself in such a helpless situation again, and I won't need him to risk his life to save me. On the contrary, because of rebirth, I now know many secrets unknown to others. I can save myself and Zhou Huaijin countless times. Your Highness, the Crown Prince is plotting to harm you. Zhou Huaijin raised an eyebrow at me. Such words shouldn't be spoken. The Crown Prince is the Lord, and I am the subject. If the Lord wants the subject dead, the subject has no choice but to die. I clenched my fists. A wise bird chooses its tree to nest in. Crown Prince Zhoulin's virtue is tarnished. He plots against his imperial uncle and will surely not be a wise ruler in the future. Evidence. Zhou Huaijin's voice was calm, as if he wasn't surprised by what I said. The medicine the Crown Prince had the imperial physician prescribe for you contains lingxi grass and gansui. These 2 are fine when used separately, but together, they enhance gansui's toxicity. Over time, the poison will seep into your organs and become incurable. Anything else? There is also, I recalled the place where the Tartars took me in my previous life. That should be one of their strongholds in Great Zhou. Yan'an Manor in the north of the city is a Tartar stronghold in Great Zhou. They've also infiltrated many spies into our capital. If your Highness doesn't believe me, you can send people to investigate. Zhou Huaijin's expression turned stern. Miss Mirong is merely a lady of the inner chambers. How could you know of such confidential matters? Do you know what fate awaits you if your information is wrong? Fate? Huh? It can't be worse than my previous life. Besides, I am about to be your princess consort, even if the information is wrong. Surely your Highness wouldn't leave me without a burial ground. And moreover, since I dared to come and tell your Highness, I am naturally certain the information is true. His Highness, the Crown Prince, and my half-sister are deeply in love. And it is precisely because of this that I discovered his collusion with the Tartars to murder you. I blamed everything on the Crown Prince. In my previous life at the Eastern Palace, even if I wasn't favored, I was still the Crown Princess, after all. In the residence, aside from the Crown Prince, I had the highest status. Because of this, I discovered many secret locations in the Crown Prince's study that I didn't think much of at the time, but now realize are quite significant. I told Zhou Huaijin all of this. As long as he investigates, or once he finds something, he'll naturally believe what I said. Zhou Huijin stared at me for a long while, then suddenly smiled. With this smile, his originally cold and hard features softened considerably in an instant, making him look much more approachable. It overlapped with the face he had when he saved me in my previous life. I stared at him somewhat dazedly. After he finished smiling, he lowered his head to look at me. Murong Yue, from requesting an imperial marriage decree to marry me, to telling me all these secrets now. What else is there about you that this prince doesn't know? Nothing else, right? I've said everything I could say. I can't exactly tell him I've experienced rebirth. Right? He'd think I've lost my mind. Wait, he said. I personally requested an imperial marriage decree to marry him. He knows about all that. In an instant, my cheeks felt as hot as a burning potato. Zhou Huijin's expression visibly relaxed quite a bit. He looked at me, his tone lazy. I'll have this prince's guards escort you back later, guaranteed to scare your father into not daring to touch you. Itsuke seems like he knows quite a bit about my family's affairs, but that is understandable. Being close to the emperor is like being close to a tiger. With His Highness the Crown Prince always running to the Murong household, Zhou Huijin as a subject would definitely need to know something to protect himself or climb higher. The guard named Baiji looked at me with a hint of disbelief in his eyes. Only then did I remember that tonight. After coming out of the secret passage and wandering the streets for a long time before arriving at the Prince of Genin's residence, my appearance probably wasn't very presentable, but thinking that Zhou Huijin might be faking his illness, his image as the god of war prince had also taken a hit in my mind. We're all the same, so whatever. As for the whole warding off bad luck thing, are we still getting married? Zhou Huijin's face suddenly turned pale. He covered his lips and coughed heavily several times, then opened his palm to reveal a patch of red, a wordless answer. Looks like the bad luck still needs some warding off after all. Leaving the Prince of Genin's residence and getting into the carriage, I was still praying that the information I brought could make Zhou Huijin be on guard against the Crown Prince, and not end up terminally ill like in my previous life. Although he was critically ill on that day, he could still draw his bow and shoot arrows, slaughtering until rivers of blood flowed while surrounded by the Tartars. But that is not right. Zhou Huijin's reaction just now clearly showed he knew there was something wrong with his medicine. Then why did he seem completely unconcerned, and even became critically ill as the Crown Prince expected in my previous life? Did he truly believe that if the ruler wants his subject dead, the subject has no choice but to die? Or did he simply not care about his own life or death? Whichever it was, neither is the outcome I hoped for. I only wish for him to live safely and smoothly in this life. When I got home, my father was already waiting in the main hall holding a whip. When he saw me, he directly swung the whip at me. Murong Yue, you bastard, I told you to reflect in your room, yet you dared to sneak out and not come back all night. So what if you are marrying the Prince of Genin? He is about to die anyway. What do you have to be so smug about? It seems he thought it over all night, and decided the Prince of Genin's manor couldn't serve as my backer, so he was going to punish me again too bad. I am no longer the Murong Yue who let him push me around. I stepped back 2 paces to dodge the whip aimed straight at my face, when a figure flashed before my eyes and directly disarmed my father of his whip. Baiji, was Lord Murong just about to hit our Wangfei? My father was so frightened, he immediately knelt on the ground. This humble official wouldn't dare. Murong Shui rushed over from the back hall lifting her skirt, speaking without restraint. Murong Yue, you've really made something of yourself, staying out all night and bringing a man back, yet still dreaming of marrying into the Prince of Genin's manor. I think you are truly at death's door, and don't even know it. I let out a cold laugh. At death's door. Ha, I think the one truly at death's door is you, Murong Shui. Baiji flicked and retracted the whip in her hand, binding Murong Shui up tightly in one swift motion. She immediately froze in place, trembling all over with fear. not daring to move even half a step. The people around Zhou Huijin had all walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, all carrying the same iron-blooded ruthlessness as him. The prince has ordered, whoever dares to disrespect the princess consort will be taken directly to the Ministry of Justice prison. Second Miss Jiang, please come with us. Murong Shui was dragged away by the guards behind Baiji. Father and my stepmother, who arrived afterward, both knelt before me, desperately pleading, their postures extremely humble. It seemed they truly loved Murong Shui dearly. What about me then? What surged through my mind were all the scenes from my past life. Murong Shui humiliated me, tortured me, and even conspired with the crown prince to have me die miserably at the hands of the Tartars in the end. If I don't avenge this hatred, it will be hard to quell the resentment in my heart. I slightly curled the corners of my lips, my gaze falling on father, each word clear, bone, chillingly cold. Little sister is in the Ministry of Justice prison. At most, she'll just receive some punishment. It certainly won't cost her life. But father, you'd better be a little careful. Over these years, you must have embezzled quite a bit of my mother's dowry, right? On the day I marry, I hope father will give me every last bit of my mother's dowry. If anything is missing, I'll have the Prince of Jenin raze the entire Murong residence to the ground. Father was so furious he tried to get up to hit me, but when his gaze touched upon Baiji behind me, his body went limp again. Behind him, my stepmother was trembling all over, like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. Indeed, stepmother managed the household affairs, so she knew better than anyone exactly how much of my mother's dowry they had embezzled over the years. Stepmother's elder sister was a favored consort in the imperial harem. Her brother was the general of Zhenbei, and her late father had been a veteran minister serving 3 emperors, so their entire family held significant positions at court. This was also a major reason why the crown prince wanted to marry Murong Shui. But only after living a second life did I realize that so-called splendor was nothing but gilded rubbish, fine on the outside, rotten within. If my father hadn't embezzled so much over the years, in my previous life, they couldn't even have afforded Murong Shui's dowry, a life of licking blood off knife blades. How could it compare to the stability of a merchant family? Living a lifetime, people are all just seeking wealth after all. Me father is. And so is His Highness, the Crown Prince. Of course, same here. With money, all problems can be solved. Having no desire to get entangled with father and my stepmother anymore, I bid farewell to Baiji and headed straight back to my own courtyard. It wasn't until I sat on the small couch that the tangible sense of reality finally brought me a feeling of exhilaration. Fortunately in this life, I planned for myself early on, and barely managed to get what I wanted. My wedding with the Prince of Jenin was set for 7 days later. During these days, father continuously sent the dowry my mother had prepared for me in advance to my small courtyard. I had a list in my hands, which my mother had left in the secret passage of my room. Every time an item was delivered, I would mark it off on the list. For each day the dowry remained incomplete. Murong Shui would have to stay an extra day in the Ministry of Justice's prison. To save Murong Shui, my stepmother desperately tried to gather the portion she had embezzled. She even secretly went to beg her own elder brother and elder sister for help. It seems my father still left himself a way out. He didn't dare expose the gold he had embezzled. Well, of course, when it comes to matters that could cost one's head, one must be extremely cautious. However, because of Murong Shui being thrown into the Ministry of Justice's prison, father, my stepmother, and those servants in the mansion who were used to treating people based on their status, all became much more restrained toward me. Perhaps they were afraid I'd have them thrown into the Ministry of Justice's prison too. I don't look that fierce and unreasonable, do I? Who cares about them? Anyway, these past few days I've been eating well and sleeping soundly. My complexion is much better than when I just came back from rebirth. This day, I was in the courtyard taking inventory of my dowry when the little maid Lu Yue came running in from outside, wiping her tears. "Miss, please don't get married." "Okay." I was startled. "What happened? Could it be that my stepmother is stirring up trouble again?" Lu Yue sobbed. "The Prince of Jenen's mansion sent so many betrothal gifts. His previous 2 wives were just casually carried through the door. But this time he sent so many betrothal gifts for Miss. People outside are all talking about the 3 letters and 6 etiquettes, 4 documents and 5 gold pieces, 8 carrier palanquin, 10 miles of red dowry, a proper formal marriage. They also say that the Prince of Jenen truly has Miss in his heart. But I ran outside before she could finish. The overwhelming red trousseau made my brain think for a moment that I was truly someone cherished. But thinking of what happened a few days ago, I immediately felt at ease. Zhou Huijin must have gone to investigate, confirmed that everything I said was true. So he is giving me so many gifts to express his gratitude. He is quite a nice person. I unconsciously curved my lips, while Lu Yue was stomping her feet anxiously. "Miss, how can you still smile? The Prince of Jenen must think you'll die after marrying him. So he wants to give you more compensation. Let's not get married. Okay, let's run away." "Yes, run away. Run to a place where no one can find us." I picked up Lu Yue and brought her back to the manor during the scorching summer when I was 5. That year, she was only about 3 years old. In the blink of an eye, we've both grown into adults. I teased her. "All the land under heaven belongs to the king. Where could we possibly escape to?" Lu Yue's tears fell down with a swoosh. "Woo woo woo, miss. You can't die, you should run. I'll marry in your place." "This silly girl. I won't die. Zhou Huijin is faking his illness. The reason those 2 women bestowed by His Majesty for the luck, bringing marriage died, was because they were His Majesty's people, trying to spy on information about the Prince of Jenen's manor, so they could only be killed off. I am different. Zhou Huijin and I are now grasshoppers tied to the same rope." On the wedding day, the Prince of Jenen's manor was very lively. The Empress Dowager and His Majesty both came. Even Crown Prince Jolin had his house arrest lifted and appeared at the grand wedding. If he hadn't been staring at me with such a chilly gaze, I think I would have welcomed him more. Supported by guards, Zhou Huijin, with a deathly pale face and gasping for breath, completed the wedding ceremony with me. Quite a convincing act. However, the fact that he could stay conscious was already enough to delight the Empress Dowager, and she bestowed 2 chests of gold, silver, and jewels on the spot to add to my trousseau. Probably because she thought my luck, bringing marriage, was working. But getting married is really exhausting. After going through all those elaborate rituals and procedures, I was so hungry I felt dizzy. I really envied Zhou Huijin, who got sent back to his room early to rest because of his health. When I was brought to the bridal chamber, I directly lifted the red veil, picked up the tea on the table, and drank a cup. So refreshing. There were also several plates of pastries on the table. I took 1 piece from each plate to avoid eating too obviously and being seen by the wedding matron if she came in. But I have to say, the osmanthus cake is still the best, soft and chewy, leaving a lingering fragrance. I've loved eating it since I was little, but unfortunately, after growing up, I fell out of favor, and it has been a long time since I've had something this delicious. Let me have 1 more piece, just one piece after another. I could only comfort myself that I was just too hungry. When Zhou Huijin came back, I had eaten the entire plate of osmanthus cakes into my stomach. After he dismissed the guards who were supporting him, he closed the door and slowly walked towards me. His gaze held a hint of smile completely different from the sickly appearance during the wedding ceremony. It is just that his complexion was still a bit pale. Thinking about the time he coughed up blood before, it seems his body does indeed have some problems. I was a bit hungry. Zhou Huijin hummed in response. His long arms wrapped around me and pulled me tightly into his embrace. I struggled backwards, but he used the momentum to fall onto the bed with me. What are you doing?" His fingertips brushed across my cheek. Of course it is doing what husband and wife should do. What? I sell my skills, not my body. Even if we were going to do that, isn't this a bit too fast? Just as I was about to struggle, he tilted his head slightly and brought his lips to my ear. The Crown Prince's people are outside. Oh, so that is it. I understood in my heart. Acting, huh? I am good at this. Staring at his pale complexion, I pushed him onto the bed with a backhand. Your Highness, tonight, this concubine will serve you. Zhou Huaijin let out a muffled laugh. Then I'll trouble the princess. The candlelight flickered, the hibiscus curtains warm. Zhou Huaijin and I kept up the act for half the night, falling into deep sleep after becoming utterly exhausted. Waking up the next day, I was sleeping in Zhou Huaijin's arms. His eyes were closed, his large hand resting on my waist, the warmth burning. I unconsciously shifted a little. He held me tighter, murmuring like sleep talk. Yer, the Crown Prince's people haven't left yet. They really have patience. They can eavesdrop for an entire night. I didn't dare move anymore, keeping my eyes closed and curling up beside Zhou Huaijin, trying to minimize my presence. After a long while, I heard him chuckle. Time to get up. We need to go to the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. Oh right, I almost forgot. I scrambled up from the bed in a fluster, not knowing where I touched him. He sharply inhaled, and I anxiously lifted the blanket. Are you injured? He grabbed my hand and said through gritted teeth, Marong Yue, turn around. What for? Throwing a tantrum first thing in the morning. I huffily turned around. He got dressed and walked straight out, without even saying a word. Did I just kick his anger switch? If yesterday's wedding, where the Prince of Junin was lucid, was worth everyone's cheers, then this morning, the Prince of Junin being able to slowly walk into the palace with the support of guards is even more worth celebrating. The Empress Dowager kept holding my hand, saying I was the little lucky star of the Prince of Junin's residence, and bestowed many precious gifts upon me. The Emperor and Empress were also there, along with many consorts accompanying them. Amidst all the blessings, I clearly felt a trace of venomous gaze. It was my stepmother's sister, that highly favored noble consort. My evaluation, clown. The Crown Prince didn't show up. Great, not an eyesore, but Zhou Huaijin still seemed to be mad at me. No idea where such a big temper came from. And I have absolutely no idea how I even offended him. Moody dog of a man. After returning from the palace, I quietly asked Baiji if Zhou Huaijin had some kind of morning grumpiness, and Baiji respectfully yet seriously told me, no such thing. He also said that before this, Zhou Huaijin didn't know the person trying to harm him was the Crown Prince. It was my reminder that made him start to become aware. So I actually helped him. Then why is he treating me like this? Could it be because he doesn't love me, so he is unwilling to marry me? But he wasn't like this last night either. So annoying. Can't be bothered with him. Let me just call Lu Yue to go shopping together. Candied hawthorns, osmanthus cakes. Here I come. At night when I was preparing to rest, Zhou Huaijin pushed the door open and entered. Long hair draped behind his head, dressed in a white inner garment, exactly the same as when he saved me in my past life. My heart instantly softened. Forget it. Why bother arguing with a sick person like him? Do you want to sleep together? Only after the words left my mouth did I realize I had misspoken, standing by the bed with a flushed face, not daring to look at him. The Crown Prince's people should have left by now today. He walked forward and let out a sigh. Yue, I am sorry. I am not angry at you. I just afraid that if I get too close to you, I won't be able to control myself. What does that mean? I looked up at him, and he was looking at me too. In that instant, I suddenly had an epiphany. In my past life I had been married, so I wasn't ignorant of matters between men and women. Therefore, what I kicked this morning was, no wonder he told me to turn around. How could this be? I felt my face grow even hotter, raised my hand, and gave him a push. "Why are you so annoying?" He let out a muffled groan, scarlet blood seeping from the corner of his lips, winding down along his jawline, soaking through his plain white collar. I rushed forward in panic, tearing open the white inner garment on his body. The sight before me made my breath stop short. On that broad, upright body, old and new scars crisscrossed and covered it. Hideous blade scars, deep arrow wounds, purple, blue bruises, layered upon layers, crawling across his back and chest. Each one carved a heart, wrenching past, stinging my eyes until they turned sour. The wound I had just pushed against had its flesh torn open, crimson beads of blood rushing out one after another, scalding hot blood gushing forth, quickly soaking the surrounding flesh and staining a large patch of the plain white inner garment, the glaring red spreading into a shocking stain on the snow. White fabric. Bitterness and guilt surged like a tidal wave, instantly drowning all my emotions. My eyes suddenly grew hot, my fingertips trembling as I wanted to touch it, yet afraid of hurting him, could only freeze midair, my heart feeling as if crushed by a boulder, sour and aching, the pain beyond measure. After a long while, I heard my own voice. "Does it hurt?" He shook his head. "It doesn't hurt anymore." How could it not hurt? So many wounds, all proof of him risking his life for the people of Great Joe. He was Great Joe's war god prince, but he was also a mortal man of flesh and blood. I held him and wept uncontrollably from heartache. He somewhat awkwardly comforted me. "It really doesn't hurt anymore. Look, except for this one wound. The others have long since healed." I looked up at him through blurred eyes. He was also looking at me, his gaze calm, yet inexplicably made me feel a sense of familiarity. I couldn't help but ask him, "Zhou Huaijin, have I seen you somewhere before?" The ice and snow in his eyes melted, somewhat incredulous, with a hint of incongruous shyness. He gazed at me deeply, his eyes brimming with an affection so thick it couldn't be dissolved. As if possessed, I asked, "Have you been waiting for me for a long time?" He tightly held me in his arms and lowered his head to kiss my eyes. "Don't cry, it breaks my heart." "Heartbreak my ass. Men's words can't be trusted." The next day when I woke up, Zhou Huaijin was no longer in the room. I felt like I had been torn apart by 5 horses all night long, every limb and bone aching. I don't even know how I ended up in bed with him. The way he devoured me didn't look like a sick person at all. I cried until my voice went hoarse, but it didn't bring back his senses, until I drifted off into a drowsy sleep. I still couldn't figure out where exactly I had met him before. I only vaguely heard him murmuring in my ear. His voice was very soft, yet deafening. He said, you are finally mine." But that is still no reason for him to torment me all night. Cursing and grumbling as I sat up from the bed, I noticed there was now an exquisite jade puppy pendant bracelet on my wrist, looking very similar to the puppy I lost in my childhood. Did Zhou Huaijin put this on me while I was asleep? He couldn't be that dog I tearfully ate 3 big bowls of, could he? No. I must not be fully awake yet. Otherwise, how could I come up with such an absurd idea? While I was still in a daze, Liu Yue pushed the door open and came in. Seeing the marks on my body, her lips quivered, and she burst into tears. "Miss, let's run away. Look how badly you are hurt. This Prince Jenin's manor is even scarier than our Murong family. No wonder the 2 young ladies before you both died. Miss, if you stay any longer, you'll die too, miss." I felt a bit embarrassed. I wanted to disappear on the spot. Liu Yu was younger than me to begin with, and still an unmarried maiden. It was normal that she didn't understand matters of intimacy, but she thought Zhou Huaijin was abusing me. How was I supposed to explain this? While I was struggling to choose my words carefully, I saw her stomp her foot and run outside. "I am going to the Eastern Palace to beg the Crown Prince. His Highness used to be so good to Miss. He'll definitely help Miss. Liu Yue, don't you dare go." I struggled to walk behind her, wanting to chase but unable to catch up, cursing Zhou Huaijin over and over in my heart. Forget it. Forget it. This girl Liue didn't know about the crown prince and Murong Shui. Let her go get turned away at the door. She'll definitely come back crying in a bit. I was originally planning to have other maids help me comb my hair, only to discover that in the entire vast Prince Jenin's manor, aside from a few guards and Zhou Huaijin's wet nurse, there was actually no one else. It was the wet nurse who helped me put up my hair. It was also the wet nurse who told me that, as it turned out, Zhou Huaijin had been sent to the Tartars as a hostage at the age of 3, and didn't return to Great Zhou until he was 9. The prince suffered a lot. The Tartars often abused him. If he hadn't been so sharp-witted, he probably would have died long ago. The only reason he could return to Dazhou was because the old emperor passed away at that time. The wet nurse wiped her tears as she spoke, and my heart ached more and more as I listened. I never knew Zhou Huaijin had such a past. I always thought someone like him, so accomplished in both literary and martial arts, must have been carefully cultivated by the royal family. So it was all his own effort. How hard his life must have been. Then in my previous life, did he save me because he had been caught in the rain himself? So he wanted to hold an umbrella for me. I don't know. But I do know that Zhou Huaijin is a very good person. After eating, I was leaning on the small couch dozing off when Liue burst in frantically. "Miss, something's happened." She told me breathlessly what she had heard. The prince was reported for faking his illness. His Majesty had him summoned to the palace and detained early this morning. They say the 2 brides bestowed by His Majesty for the wedding ritual weren't jinxed to death either. They were killed by the prince. My drowsiness vanished instantly, and I sat up abruptly. What is going on? Who told you all this? Carelessly discussing royal affairs can cost you your head. Liue shook her head in a panic. It is not careless talk. It was the Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince who said it. The Crown Prince said it? Simply put, the Crown Prince did this. But nothing like this happened in my previous life. In my previous life, Zhou Huaijin was genuinely ill and nearly dying. What else did the Crown Prince say? Liu Yue blinked at me as if seeking credit. His Highness the Crown Prince said that Prince Jenin's achievements overshadow the sovereign, and His Majesty has long wanted to exile him to the frontier. He also said if you don't want to be exiled, hurry to the back gate of Prince Jenin's residence to find him. He'll take you to the Eastern Palace, give you a new name and identity, and protect you for life. Even a dog wouldn't believe this nonsense. Me poor Liue, deceived by that scoundrel. The Crown Prince is clearly like a cornered dog jumping over a wall. He dared to submit a memorial accusing Zhou Huaijin of faking illness. Is he planning to completely tear apart all pretenses with Prince Jenin's residence? Then, why does he want me to go find him? As a hostage? Does he think I grew a brain just to look taller? Your Majesty has an illness in the head. If left untreated, it will surely worsen. But what is going on with Zhou Huaijin? Didn't I already tell him so much about the previous life in advance? How could he still capsize in the gutter? Looking down at the puppy bracelet on my wrist, I abruptly stood up. No, I have to go save him. I still don't know when we met before. He can't die. I stumbled and ran outside. Just as I stepped out the door, I saw Zhou Huaijin sitting in a wooden wheelchair being pushed over by Baiji. His face was pale. He looked up at me, a hint of sorrow hidden in his gaze. Where are you planning to go? Liue stood behind me with her head lowered, not saying a word. Did she think I was going to find the Crown Prince? And now we've both been caught red-handed by Prince Jenin, fool. Let her go while scared. Let's see if she still dares to disobey me and seek help from others without permission next time. I squatted down, held Zhou Huaijin's hand, and stared at him without blinking. Is the matter resolved? Are you hurt? His tone was cold. Not hurt. Then why are you in a wheelchair? You scared me to death. I thought you were hurt. Can you stand up? Should I help you back to the room? As I said this, I was about to help him up, but he didn't move. Was the princess consort about to go out just now? What else? I frowned and sniffled. Lu Yue just came back in a panic saying you were detained by His Majesty. I was very worried and wanted to go to the palace to plead with the Empress Dowager. Zhou Huaijin raised his hands to hold my waist, buried his head against me, his voice sounding a bit aggrieved. Yue, I thought you didn't want me anymore. How could that be? Am I that kind of person? After bringing Zhou Huaijin to the room, I anxiously pulled open his clothes, and only completely relaxed after confirming he really wasn't hurt. As long as you are fine. As long as you are fine. He leaned on the small couch looking at me. Don't you have anything to ask? Number as long as he is not hurt. That is good enough. Where would I get so many questions to ask? It is not like I am a question mark come to life. Aren't you afraid I am cursed to bring doom to my wives? I blinked. Weren't the two before me killed by you? He couldn't help but laugh, indeed. Of those two, one was a Tartar spy. I discovered her the very night she entered the manor. I killed her directly to warn the Tartars that our great Zhou is no soft persimmon. The other was His Majesty's informant. She noticed something suspicious about my illness and wanted to secretly report it to the Emperor, so I had no choice but to send her to meet the King of Hell. He spoke so casually, yet I listened with my heart pounding in fear. The war god prince, devoted wholeheartedly to the great Zhou's realm and its common people, struggling to survive amid internal troubles and external threats. How could a single word difficult possibly describe it all? Those people deserve to die. Zhou Huaijin, it is them who deserve to die. It is not your fault. It is not that you are cursed to doom your wives. It is them who deserve to die. Zhou Huaijin's gaze darkened, rippling with emotions I couldn't decipher, like undercurrents surging beneath, or a thin layer of frost covering the surface. I couldn't tell if it was regret or something else. He remained silent for a moment, then suddenly raised his hand and pulled me forcefully into his embrace. His arms tightened around me, so tight they nearly cut off my breath, his knuckles turning white with an almost obsessive force. The Crown Prince doesn't love you. I know. He doesn't love anyone, only power. Leaning against his slightly cool embrace, my fingertips curled gently and a faint curve tugged at the corner of my lips. I don't care whether he loves me or not. I only care about you. Zhou Huaijin buried his head in the crook of my neck. Nothing like what happened today will ever happen again. I hummed in response. Then can you tell me now when and where exactly did we meet? He laughed heartily. Little Yue, don't rush. You'll remember eventually. If you really can't recall, I'll tell you. I hate men who keep me in suspense the most. On the day of returning to my maiden home, Zhou Huaijin accompanied me to the Murong residence. Father and stepmother were as silent as cicadas in winter. Murong Shui didn't dare breathe loudly. On the day of my grand wedding with the Prince of Jenin, His Majesty assigned her to the Crown Prince as a secondary consort, still giving face to the imperial consort in the palace. Otherwise, she might have only become a concubine. The Crown Prince didn't object. See, how can serving a man with beauty ever last? Fading looks and waning affection are just a matter of time. But what does that have to do with me? Living this life again, I only wish for the safety of those around me. On the night we returned from the Murong residence to the prince's manor, I had a dream. In the dream, I saw how Zhou Huaijin and I first met. It was nothing more than him being bullied, and I helped him and gave him a piece of osmanthus cake. And he remembered it for a lifetime. He rushed to save me at all costs, but I still died. He went mad, charging in and out of the rain of arrows 3 times, slaughtering every last Tartar. He even killed until his eyes turned red, pressing his sword against Crown Prince Zhoulin's neck. Murong Shui blocked in front and had her throat slit by a single stroke. Zhoulin knelt on the ground, begging for mercy. Zhou Huijin's voice was ice cold. Everyone who caused her death must be buried alongside her. The Crown Prince is no exception. You all deserve to die. After a mist of blood, the Crown Prince's body crashed to the ground, eyes wide open in death. The court was in an uproar. His Majesty ordered him, covered in wounds, to be exiled to the bitter cold lands of the northeast. He only had Baiji and a few guards by his side, a desolate end unbefitting his years of risking life, and Lim for Da Zhou, on the road to exile. He encountered Tatars hunting him down, to spare the people of Da Zhou from further suffering of war. He dragged his broken body and killed every last one of those Tatars. He and his guards, like towering mountains, held their ground on the road to the capital. Their bodies were riddled with arrows, yet not a single one retreated. Their deaths were tragic, yet heroic. The day his remains were brought back, the entire city mourned in silence, and the mountains and rivers wept. He was dead, and only then did everyone begin to speak of his virtues, remembering that he was Da Zhou's god of war prince, remembering all the good he had done for the people of Da Zhou. But no one knew that those Tatars were impostors sent by His Majesty, their sole purpose being to kill Zhou Huijin and appease the Crown Prince's spirit in heaven. The god of war prince in everyone's hearts did not die on the battlefield, nor did he die at the hands of the enemy. He died in the emperor's political machinations. I saw everything clearly in my dream, yet was powerless to save him. Zhou Huijin. I struggled to wake up, only to find myself held in his arms. His tone was gentle as he kept comforting me. It is okay. It is okay. How could it be okay? Looking at him with tears streaming down my face, I suddenly realized that this life of mine was probably something he had begged for on my behalf. Zhou Huijin. I had a nightmare. In the dream, I died, and so did he. I don't know if it was that sea of blood that clouded my mind, but I suddenly blurted out, Zhou Huijin, why don't we just stage a coup? In the previous life, after Zhou Huijin learned of the Crown Prince and the Emperor's intentions, he had been feigning illness. He knew well the principle that when the cunning hare dies, the hunting dog gets cooked. When the birds are gone, the good bow is put away. But because of me, he still couldn't escape unscathed in the end. In this life, I don't want him to fall into that situation again. If death is inevitable either way, then why not take a gamble? Maybe we can still save a life. After hearing me out, Zhou Huijin was silent for a long while. I don't want to do such a thing. I can't disregard the people of the world for my own selfish desires. They've suffered from war for so long. This current era of peace and prosperity was bought with the soldiers' blood and lives. I don't want their deaths to be in vain. My tears fell uncontrollably. But I don't want you to die either. He is the kind of kind-hearted person who would remember a lifetime of gratitude just for a piece of osmanthus cake. He cares for all the people in the world. He has his noble principles, but he is my husband. I just want him to be able to live well. That is all. He gathered me into his embrace, holding me tightly. I won't die, and I won't let you die either, Yuer, trust me. I'll arrange a way out. What way out could ever stand against the Emperor's golden decree? I was truly terrified of the tragedy from my dreams, repeating itself. The turbulent past of these two lives, I remembered every detail clearly. Zhou Huijin's tragic end. How could I not be afraid? How could I just watch it happen all over again? Tears fell drop by drop before me, and Zhou Huijin panicked. He leaned down and wrapped me tightly in his arms, his fingertips frantically wiping my tears. Yet they kept coming endlessly. Warm kisses landed one after another, gently falling on my hair and tear-stained cheeks. His voice was low and hoarse as if soaked in water carrying a solemn vow. Don't cry. Yuer, don't cry. I swear. I will keep us both safe. But once an emperor's suspicion takes root, it won't rest until death. In the end, the emperor still used the crown prince's memorial as a pretext, publicly lashing out at Zhou Huijin. With a single imperial decree, everyone in the Prince of Genan's manor was banished to the barren, bitter cold wastelands of the north. The day we left the capital, the cold wind swept dead leaves against my face. I clutched Zhou Huijin's sleeve, my knuckles turning white, my heart lodged in my throat the entire time. Later, he and I both perished at the hands of mountain bandits on the road of exile. Our bodies were transported back to the manor, and the emperor decreed a grand burial. At that time, Zhou Huijin and I had already arrived at the water towns of Jiangnan. I stood at the bow of the boat, the evening breeze brushing against my sleeves, gazing for the first time so peacefully at this land, where I had lived 2 lifetimes. The setting sun melted into gold, spilling across the river. Green mountains on both banks rose and fell in succession. Cooking smoke curled gently upward, somehow vaster and gentler than ever before. The person beside me gently took my hand, his palm warm and dry, his grip steady and reassuring. His eyes were tender, a faint smile playing on his lips. I promised you, and I will definitely keep it. From now on, through the long road ahead, year after year, I will hold your hand and walk slowly, step by step. Side story: Prince Genin, when I was sent to the Tartars as a hostage, I was only 3 years old. Years of continuous warfare had left the common people displaced and suffering beyond words. Imperial Father was advanced in age, and to give the border regions a few years of peace, he sent me away with tears in his eyes. They all thought I would die at the hands of the Tartars, but I didn't. They bullied and humiliated me. I endured and retreated step by step, telling myself each time that I would leave. I definitely would. Finally, in the year I turned 9, Imperial Father passed away. The entire nation mourned together, and I was able to return to Dazhou, covered in wounds, barely clinging to life. I thought I would receive the best care, but it was quite the opposite. My return was like dropping a stone into the calm lake of the palace. It stirred up ripples of helplessness, one circle after another. I was placed in a remote corner of the palace. Everyone in the palace treated me as an ill omen, a freak who had returned from the land of barbarians. The way they looked at me was filled with disdain, fear, and a hint of schadenfreude. The palace maids and eunuchs feigned compliance while defying me behind my back, skimping on my rations, feeding me spoiled food, and dressing me in the coarsest fabrics. They would deliberately laugh and chatter loudly in front of me, gossiping about which prince had just received rewards, which princess's gown was made of cloud brocade, newly tributed from Jiangnan. Their shrill voices, every single word piercing my heart like needles. I didn't care. Compared to the suffering I endured among the Tartars, these cold treatments and mockeries were hardly worth mentioning. But on that cold winter night, several uninvited guests came to my quarters. They surrounded me, making no effort to hide their malice. I heard there is a monster hiding in this palace who came back from the Tartars. Oh my, so this is that hostage. I thought she'd be something terrifying, but she is just a sickly weakling. I heard you learned quite a few tricks from the Tartars. Why don't you perform one for us? I raised my head and looked at them coldly, saying nothing. Me silence seemed to enrage them. Somebody reached out, grabbed my hair, and slammed my head hard against the edge of the bed. I let out a muffled groan from the pain, blood instantly seeping from my forehead. What surged more fiercely than the pain was the chill in my heart. The peace I bought for Great Joe with 6 years of my life has bred these arrogant wastes. Then what is the meaning of me being alive? As my consciousness blurred, I heard a soft, childish voice. The Empress Dowager is here. The people around me scattered at once. I saw that little girl in a pale pink palace dress, holding a puppy. She crouched beside me, her eyes red. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Then why are you crying? Was I crying? Maybe because she was the first person in so many years to care whether I was in pain. This is for you to eat." She handed me a pastry wafting with osmanthus fragrance. I took a bite. So sweet, the most delicious thing I'd ever eaten. She and the puppy in her arms stared at me with wide eyes. So cute. After she left, I secretly went to see His Majesty. I requested to go to the frontier, and promised him I would drive the Tartars out of Great Joe's territory within 5 years. He granted it, and so I began a life of charging into battle. Amidst the clashing blades and mountains of corpses and seas of blood, that little girl named Murong Yue was the only solace in my heart. I would occasionally return to the capital and send people to inquire about her. They told me her puppy died, and she was very sad, but I had no way to help her, and she didn't need my help either. She had the crown prince by her side. This was fine too. At least she wouldn't be implicated because of me. Times had changed. I was no longer that hostage prince who could be bullied at will. I had become a thorn in His Majesty's heart. Outshining the sovereign is a great taboo. I understood. So, after driving out the Tartars, I chose to feign illness. The day she married the crown prince, I coughed up blood. It wasn't feigned illness. I was truly sick. His Majesty and the crown prince were very wary of me. They discovered I had inquired about the young lady, so they schemed to deceive her. And she fell in love with the crown prince, accepting all of this willingly. What could I do? I could only do everything in my power to protect her peace in this lifetime. But she still died right in front of me. I went mad. With only one thought in my mind, I would kill everyone to be buried with her. They all deserved to die. I deserved to die too. How could I believe someone who only cared about power and schemes could truly love her? On the road to exile, I suspected those Tartars were fake, because it was too coincidental, and because I knew the Tartars couldn't stir up such a big storm in such a short time. But I couldn't let my guard down. The people of Great Joe had just begun to live some peaceful days. My guards and I fought with our lives, exchanging them for a brief moment of daylight. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw the young lady coming to pick me up, smiling sweetly. I called out to her, "Yeah, wait for me."